Welcome to Real Estate Live, where your questions get answered. We get to the point with the hot topics everyone is talking about twice a week. We go live at 9 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube and Facebook. Today's hot topic is all about, is now a good time to buy a house? How do you know? I mean, there's so many people out there with conflicting emotions. The market's going to crash. The market's going to explode. What's really going on here? And what the heck is up with rates? To tell us more about that, we have two special guests today. We have Celeste Harvey with Fairway Mortgage that's going to be joining in to give us more information about the recent mortgage app data that came out this past Wednesday, along with what's going on with mortgage rates right now. Later on, we'll have superstar real estate agent. And I got to be honest, this guy used to be my former coach a few years ago, and he's absolutely amazing. Michael Ireland with eXp Realty. I'm your host, Andrew Finney with King Realty Group in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, let's get after it. Good morning, Celeste and Michael. Thank you for joining.
Good morning, Andrew.
And good morning, Andrew and all.
Awesome.
Happy Margarita Friday.
Yes, that is your tagline, Miss Celeste. It is a Margarita Friday, and thank you, ma'am. So why don't we take your Margarita Friday right into your mortgage rate update?
Fantastic. Okay, guys. So here you can see I have MBS Highway open up, and we are looking at mortgage bonds today. We can see that the 2.5% coupon is up only just 2 bips. Stocks are up slightly, and so is the 10-year. But really, what I want us to look at is this chart here. So here you can see all the way from April 6th to June 19th, sorry, I don't know what day it is today. All the way from April 6th to June 19th, we can see that bonds are trading sideways. We haven't seen very much volatility, and that's really because the Fed has been purchasing mortgage-backed securities. In fact, today they purchased $4.7 billion in mortgage-backed securities. I've been talking a lot about the 50-day moving average, which is this black line here, and the 25-day moving average. You can see last week we kind of broke beneath both, and then we shot back up and we broke above. Now we're back in the middle between the 25 and the 50-day moving average, and bonds are being squeezed, but they're hanging tight on that 50-day moving average. And eventually we're going to see a breakthrough. We're either going to see a breakthrough to the upside or the downside. So that's something that we got to kind of monitor. But what I can say is this week is we haven't really seen very much movement in pricing. Things have been very stable this week. So we're still seeing great interest rates, historically low interest rates. For a 30-year fixed loan, we're seeing interest rates in the low to mid 3s. And again, that really just depends on your specific situation. You know, what's your credit score? What's your loan to value? What loan program are you doing? You know, FHA, VA, conventional. For 15-year fixed mortgages, we're in the mid 2s. And again, that all depends on your specific qualifications.
Good stuff. So do you think that the rates are going to keep, stabilizing, or do you think they're going to go up? Do you think they're going to go down? Where are you at in your consideration with what you're watching when you look at this data?
So it really just depends on, if there's any news that comes out about a potential vaccine or treatment for COVID-19. If something comes to market a lot sooner than we may think, we might see, bonds kind of decline a little bit. We're also seeing, as some states reopen, an increase in COVID-19 cases. So that could potentially, cause interest rates maybe to go down a little bit. Just depending if we see a massive second wave of COVID-19 cases. So there's still a lot of uncertainty. We can't really tell exactly which way things are going to go. But overall, rates should remain low because the Fed is purchasing the mortgage-backed securities, and they are really committed to keeping the mortgage market stable. So for the long term, we should see great mortgage interest rates, but it doesn't mean we can't see little pockets of volatility.
Good stuff. And thank you for that, Celeste, because those are all excellent points. And it's all about what's going on right now with the real estate market and trying to find out if now is a good time, if someone's on the fence, if someone's thinking about it. I'm sure that Michael's had a lot of those conversations with people recently as well. And speaking of Mr. Michael, what I'd like to do is for everybody joining in on the live, thank you, number one, for being here. And if you're catching us after the live, thank you so much for tuning in. Now, Michael Ireland is an awesome real estate agent, and he truly is a superstar. And, when we talk about superstar real estate agents, this gentleman closes and helps well over 60, 70 families on average every single year, if not more, not including the teammates that he has on within his team and brokerage. So it is important to know that if you want to reach out to Michael Ireland, this is his website. And if you'd like to follow Michael, you can do so right here on his Instagram. Both of these links are in the description below if you want to give Michael some love. Mr. Michael, give us some love, Mr. Michael.
I have maybe more love than wisdom, but here goes the wisdom first. And it's not my own, of course. This is the wisdom of ages and the wisdom of people with far higher elevations of vision than I do, Andrew. And so the question that is often repeated is, where's the market at? What can we anticipate will happen? And, it's somebody said it's really hard to make predictions, particularly when it is about the future. And so what does that mean? Is that we want to predict the future prices and trends because for some people, they're at a decisive point. Do I wait because of uncertainty and then wait for certainty to come into the equation to give me the green light that, yes, it's okay to get into the market? What happens if I get into the market now and prices further erode? All these fears come into play. And I don't have to explain to anybody how fear is a greater emotion in driving people's consumer choices around buying and selling. So we can always look to the past as an indicator of the future. Okay? And, I'll throw a quote or two in here because, sometimes these quotes exist for a reason. And I think it was Plato said that the most important lesson to be learned from history is that people do not learn from history. So for many of us here who maybe have not lived through multiple real estate cycles, a curious pattern emerges. As you know, both in the markets, specifically in real estate, prices go up, prices go down. And there's different stories that come into play that influence the emotions that drive the market. Okay. And so we could look at the narrative right now in today's paper about markets are unstable, prices could be dropping, interest rates could go up. And these are virtually almost verbatim to publications from the last decade, the one before, and the one before, and on and on and on into the past. So what we always need to be remembering is that human behavior really does not change. And, one of the fundamental needs that we have is we need a premise to call our home. And we know that real estate represents an asset clearly among all the other asset classes. And so let's look at why real estate has, by most people that have amassed large and small fortunes, why that's been the chosen vehicle. It's because, first, real estate, it's the premise for all human activity. Without it, what can you do? Nice to have the internet, but you do need a physical premise, would you agree, in which to live or work or function? And so there's a finite amount of that, even, the town that you all live in. And so to be invested into a piece of that is so essential for you to feel as though, you're making some traction in your life in terms of what you're accumulating for your net worth. The other curious thing about real estate is it's what we call the inflation hedge. And so, which means that inflation, which is the natural outcome of governments who like to feed currency into the system, keep the economy buoyant, keep people working, it ultimately that money finds its way into real estate. And so as a result, you have more money, currency, chasing fewer fixed or the hard assets, real estate. And as a result, that's what accounts for the incredible price increases we've seen over the decades. Just look at the last one, for example. So, consider this. We don't know what is going to happen. We don't know the future, but we can always default to what we know about human nature and the need to have a piece of the rock. So where we are in the landscape right now is we have, as Celeste mentioned, we have interest rates that just are so attractive for people that can qualify. They'll turn to their parents or grandparents and say, "What do you think?" And those people will talk about the double-digit mortgage rates that they had to endure to get into the game. Okay, so currently you've got that facility to help you. And if people are concerned about the markets destabilizing, which sometimes it does, 5-10%, if you have something like a pandemic that won't go away, well, then prices do reflect that. People can put in offers that are more in alignment with that. And so, but a question you want to ask yourself is, talk to people who have owned real estate for years and for decades and ask them, was it a good investment? Do they ever look back and wish, hey, would have bought that when it was that price? And really, how many people do you know that regret, hey, I really regret buying real estate way back then? So that, in summary, is where we are at right now, where everybody who's ever bought has ever been to make the decision, is this the right timing? So never try to time the market. Just buy what is going to be an accommodation for you today. Get into the market, because then as that train moves, it's going to open up more and more possibilities. You're going to have debt reduction as a result of you paying down your mortgage. You're going to, if it's revenue property, you're going to have rents that will increase over time. And, this is the simplicity of the game.
Mm-hmm. I think those are really good points. And you mentioned a couple of different things that are like 100% in congruence with everything that I do. And normally what I try to share with spreading love, joy, and hope across the world as best as I can. One of those things is fear. Fear, as you know, Michael, is really just false evidence appearing real. And the best way to replace fear is with knowledge. And that's the purpose of these live streams. It's the purpose of this channel. It's the purpose of what we do
100%.
As professionals, is to share the truth. And speaking of the truth, it goes back to something that I love to say. And yes, Michael, you may use this at some point. Just throw a shout out to me, right? Every coin has three sides. We have the extreme on one side that says that it's like Chicken Little, the sky is falling down. We got the extreme on the opposite side that says, hey, you know what? Everything is hunky-dory and it's never been better. But yet the third side, right there in the middle, is the often overlooked side of that coin. And that's the third side where the truth resides. And that's the point of this channel. And what you were sharing right there with fear, I go say hashtag Beyond Fears the movement. Let's move beyond false evidence appearing real with the truth. And the more that we can come together, we're always stronger and better together than we are not. But to a latter point that you made, remember I said there was three. That latter point was that vehicle of real estate and what it can do for you moving forward. I got to be honest with you, in my own personal life, and people that watch a lot of my channels may have heard me share this very openly, and it was very hard, getting a little bit easier, but still hard every time I share it. I've been through bankruptcy in 2009. I was completely laid out. I was renting. I was barely able to make my ends meet. And if I had $5 at the end of a month, I was thinking, wow, I am saving money now, right? And what happened is I was in San Diego after my active duty years, and it was a situation that was like, I'm not ever going to be able to really plan for the future at maybe saving $60 a year. I said, this is awful. So I said, where do I go? What do I do? I have this bankruptcy. I know, as a veteran, I had this thing called a VA loan, but I don't know anything about it. So I went on to, like a library computer, and I started trying to find options and what am I supposed to do, and started exploring and discovering those options about buying a home, looking at the different states, trying to say, okay, how much could I afford based upon the income, and would it be consistent whenever I move, right? So what ended up happening is I selected Las Vegas because I like the heat. It's good for my bones. My bones aren't the best anymore. I feel like I'm 100 million years old. So I needed the heat for my bones. Long story short, I moved here in 2012 and bought my first home when I was 33 years old. And I bought it for $128,000. And it was a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. And I was so excited. It wasn't the best. It wasn't so pretty. And it smelled worse than yesterday's garbage if you left it out in the sun and it was hot and wet at the same time, and then you let it compost. So, there was some work to be done that kind of paints the picture there. That said, I put in my sweat equity and I started gaining perspective on like personal accountability, which started back in San Diego. What am I going to do with my life? how am I going to move to the next venture in life? And I was like, one of those things is I need to regroup and reassess what made me successful in the Marine Corps, what made me successful here, and look back on past failures and past successes. And it ultimately came back to my country boy isms of saying, well, look, you got to take this bull, and this bull is life, and you got to take that bull by the horns, and then you got to toss it down, and then you got to carve it up and serve it out a steak for your friends, whether it be fajitas, margaritas, and everything else, right? But you can't take it unless you have the gumption to get out and pursue it. And you can't pursue it without the accountability and the drive to do so. So that's where I started thinking, what would be something that I think I could grow in? What do I think it would be something that I could be successful in? And I didn't have the best real estate experience buying that first home. So I thought, I could do this better. I could be more transparent. I can help people, and I'd be able to help them and educate them and help them know what was going on much better than I did. And hopefully they would become a more well-informed buyer or seller in that case. So then I started on this massive pursuit of knowledge and just a hunger for knowledge that continues to right now, where I've now consumed over 445 Audible books over the last 7 years. I've made over 672 YouTube videos that help educate people and help people make sense of real estate. I am going there every single day. And even though I don't have 21 million subscribers, right? Maybe it'll happen someday. But the point is I believe that as long as I am honest and I'm constantly trying to do my best and move forward and do the best I can, I believe that good people attract good people, and they'll recognize that. The reason I'm sharing this at this point in time is back to that $128,000 home. 4 years later, after I'd gotten up and running in real estate, which you were my coach for one of those years, Michael, after I got up and running, I sold that home for $250,000. I was able to buy the home that you see behind you on the screen now. And I've been here now for 4 years. And now this home, I bought this one for $380,000, and this home is now worth $700,000 in today's market. So I share this very openly and personally because I couldn't have done any of it had I not been bold enough to take the step. And to your point about the market a moment ago, as Celeste knows, I love to say the market goes up, it goes down, it goes all around. Ultimately, the best time to buy is not by chasing the market. It's by choosing and knowing when the time is right in your life for the reasons that make sense to you to buy or sell a home. So Michael, to your point, I think that everything that you shared was incredibly powerful. And I wanted to say thank you and chime in on it because there was so much that was loaded up in that.
Andrew, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
And I don't have an abacus available to make this calculation, but maybe somebody can.
Celeste is a loan officer. She's the abacus.
So 128,000, you purchased that in, you said 2008? 2012, thank you. And you sold it how many years later? For 4 years later for how much?
$250, almost twice what I paid for it.
Okay, so now somebody would look at that and they say, well, you doubled your money in 8 years. That rate of return would be what, like 12% on the surface, something like that?
In the case of that specific property, it would be 25% return for each of the years I owned it. In the case of my home now, it would be approximately 25% return for each year that I've owned it. Not accounting for it would be probably the more up, the higher you go.
Okay, I got
going back down in percentage because of the volume base. But yeah, it was very healthy.
So at first glance, looks like most people would agree about a 25% return annually, which, compared to other asset classes sounds pretty good. Mm-hmm. Now, could we maybe look at this a different way? That $128,000, how much of that was your money going in?
None of it. It was all equity. I call it the equity fairy money. I didn't do anything to earn it but pay my mortgage.
Okay. So let's say not everybody's in the position where they can put no money down. Let's say they're only putting 5% down. Would that sound like a typical situation, Celeste?
Yeah, anywhere from 3% to 5% down is typically what I see for a first-time home buyer.
Okay.
Non-first-time home buyers, 5% to 20% down. It really just depends on if they have the cash to put that much down.
Okay, so really somebody could, with decent credit, with maybe a little bit of backing from mom and dad, they could, for 5% down of $128,000 scenario, so they put down around $7,000, $8,000, correct?
I can do the calculation for you here.
So if you put down $8,000 and then you make a $128,000 profit over 4 years, what would that return rate be?
An insane one, like hundreds of percents. Because if you're talking about $8,000 and then you got 128 back off the top, you start calculating out those numbers. You're at 10. You're at 20, 22, like 2,200%.
Well, I rest my case, Your Honor. And this is why we talk about generating wealth through real estate. It's the power of leverage.
It really is. And that's why, whenever I meet with people here locally, and Celeste has these conversations every day, I'm sure that you and your agents have the same conversations every day, Michael. It's about understanding that, taking that first step, because I got so many stories out of the blessings that I've had to help over 175 people buy and sell homes over the last 6.5 years. So, I've watched people that earned $19,000 annually of gross income, buy their first home at maybe $100,000, turn around 5 years later, sell that home, maybe $200,000 plus, and then buy more of a longer term, if not forever, home for almost $400,000. But they couldn't have done it unless they took that first step, because that's a significant amount of money. So my case isn't like, one that you got to go out and buy a home because you're going to experience all this wealth. My case is you got to be clear on your reasons why. And you got to begin with the end in mind of what you want for life. And you got to be willing to take that bull by the horn and take that first step into home ownership because it's right for you in your life. But also, yes, there's all these blessings and all these benefits that come courtesy of home equity. And that's why I always say real estate done right will advance you in life. Real estate done wrong will set you back. So you got to be clear on your reasons why, if that makes sense.
Amen to that.
So I want to try to get into some of the comments that we have coming in, and thank you everybody for hanging in there with us. And it's always great to hear from everyone. Nicoletta, it is always a pleasure, my friend. I absolutely adore you and your family. So Michael, true story. Nicoletta found me on live stream on YouTube, and she'd reached out to me. It must have been about 5 weeks ago, to help her find an agent in Virginia to buy her new home with her and her husband. They closed on that house, I want to say now, it was about a week, maybe a week and a half ago.
Wow.
So true story. And she and I had several phone conversations, and an absolute delight and source of high positive mojo. So thank you, Nicoletta, for being here. Jennifer Clifton, thank you. Yes, Miss Jennifer, we all know who you are. Maybe even Michael knows you, or you know Michael or have heard of Michael. Michael is the illustrious superstar real estate agent across the United States. A lot of people know who Michael Ireland is. Antoinette, thank you. Antoinette is one of my past clients here recently. She and her husband found me while living in Hawaii to purchase their new home here in Vegas. And they flew in, Michael. It was the first time ever in my real estate career I had given the keys to a brand new homeowner that had just got off the plane from Hawaii at a casino that was about to discharge because the stay-at-home orders were locked down. The casinos were being locked down right at that time. We even took a picture. We threw it out on Instagram, and, we were fist bumping, elbow popping, whatever, trying to keep everybody safe. But it was a grand old time, and Antoinette and her husband, absolutely appreciate and adore them. And thank you for being here, Mel. Claudia says, good morning, everyone. Claudia, thank you so much for being a mainstay on the live streams and for your positive energy. Natalie Reyes, people are still buying more than the asking price. This is a true story, which brings up, is now the time to buy? You have a lot of bidding wars going on. And I recently was reading a Housing Wire article that said in the month of April alone, 42% of home buyers were in bidding wars. And it's something that we've seen again. I have an offer out right now for one of my wonderful clients that I'm working with on a triplex. They received 9 offers on this triplex over the last 2 days. And we're like, man, can we get to break over here? So what are you saying, Michael?
What am I seeing, Andrew?
What are you seeing in your market? Are you seeing bidding wars across different price points? Because to give you, for instance, of that property, it's about a $500,000 property, which in Vegas terms is, almost twice the average sales price. Our average sales price here is hovering right around $275, $280 at the moment.
I have a golden retriever.
Okay, tell me about that.
And if she misses a meal or two, and anybody who has one knows what I'm talking about, she starts biting at the bridle, and nothing can satisfy. When I do finally fill that bowl up, she comes running and unfortunately eats a little more than her fair share, if you know what I mean. But you'd have to have a golden retriever to appreciate the humor around that. So what is the relevance of that? Okay. We look at all the restrained demand and activities where people were virtually on the leash here over the COVID shutdown. And what do you think happened? Did the desire to acquire real estate, either in addition to or just a home of their own, did that desire go away? No, it was repressed. And so now we have, with some relaxed standards around social distancing and the ability to actually physically go into a house and find out where you're going to put your furniture. I mean, really, honestly, you know, how easy is that compared to looking at a home virtually and buying it that way? And so what we have is a release of that appetite into the current inventory picture. And the inventory picture, again, that's, you know, the other convergence, that we have low inventory because what seller in their right mind would want to be putting their home on the market and allowing strangers to go through. So what a classic scenario in economics, where you have high demand and you have low inventory. Oh, and Celeste, and low rates.
Extremely historically low rates, lower
Yep.
than they've ever been.
Yep, we're starting to see a lot of purchase applications come through. I would say for the last 9 weeks, I've been following purchase applications, and we've been seeing an increase every single week. So that's a really telling sign, just where our real estate market is at, where our financial market is at. So it's all really positive and healthy for our economy right now.
It is, and I appreciate that, because the mortgage apps were up, because that data just came out on Wednesday, and you shot me a text, hey, screenshot, boom. I was like, ooh, all right, thank you for that update. So it is a true statement, Natalie, at the end of the day, that yes, people are still buying more than the asking price. And it's to Michael's point about the golden retriever analogy that proves the case. There's high demand. There's a lot of hungry buyers out there. And in my housing market prediction video that I put out in January of this year, January 1st, housing market predictions 2020, people, I shared with everybody that we were in a very ultra tight housing market back then. And what was going to happen is the real housing crisis wasn't one that was going to collapse, but one where there was not enough homes to buy. And it's about gaining perspective and clarity about those reasons why you're buying, and making sure you're making a well-informed decision that's right for you. So if you want to go back in time a few months and check it out, you can hear it say, and the only thing I couldn't predict, of course, was COVID. Now, I'm not a soothsayer. I'm not a prophet. I'm not saying that I am. But what I am is a student of life and a student of the market that tries to my best to share that information openly and honestly, and, you know, have a robust conversation. When we get the conversation started, we can make a positive change. So thank you, Natalie, for bringing that up. And I'm glad that you joined us today. DK Travel says, good morning, everyone. Andrew, I love watching your videos and your tips for first-time homebuyers. I currently live overseas, but I am looking to buy my first home next year. That's amazing. And thank you so much for letting us know, DK. I see that you also then said, I'm already in contact with a trusted realtor and lender. Do you have any other tips for first-time homebuyers that are living abroad and out of state? So true story, DK. And thank you for being here, my friend. True story. Antoinette Wasser, that you saw earlier whenever I put her up on the screen, she and her husband that were purchasing from Hawaii, we never met until the day I gave them the keys. So how the heck did they buy a home thousands of miles away from Las Vegas? Well, it's one that we had a conversation. There's this stuff called social media. You may be familiar with it. In fact, we're streaming on one of them right now, YouTube, obviously, but also Facebook. Well, Facebook has that really cool feature called Facebook Messenger. And what Facebook Messenger can do is you can simply take, let me see if I can get it here. There you go, your phone, and do video tours all around a house, just like if you were walking through the home. And it's about having an agent that takes the time to drive the community, drive the area, and look at the home to put it in perspective for you. And also doing a little bit of Google legwork with Google Earth and discovering what's around the area that's to make sure that it's right for you. So if you choose to go that route, you can. But to Michael's point, with the relaxation of a lot of states reopening and people going out and looking at homes, like here in Vegas, one of our protocols is everybody has to have a mask. And in a lot of cases, I even wear my medical gloves. But it's about everybody's safety. And that goes back to the point of being stronger and better together than we are not. If we all take common sense, practical steps, we can keep each other healthy, minimize the impact of COVID, and also still move forward smartly with your life goals of buying or selling a home. So what are the tips? There's a lot. And you wouldn't want to just go over to the home buying playlist that I have on my channel and start going through it. But one of the best tips I would like to share with you is to check out the Homebuyer reality show that's out right now to know what to expect from the process and what that process looks like, because that's a real family that purchased a home, weren't paid actors, just super awesome, amazing people. And they bore with me as I tried to create a reality show. So it's a lot of fun stuff, DK. Ultimately, gain context, use the internet to your advantage, use social media to your advantage. Make sure that your trusted real estate agent that you're working with there is just as technology savvy as you are. Michael, thoughts?
Well, my thoughts tend to be pretty random unless you put them focused on a specific question. I think what I recall about the question was, now that DK has secured an agent, if this is the right time to buy or what process to be using. Could you give me some clarity on that?
Sure. I know you're streaming off your phone, so it's not so easy to see. So DK was saying that they're already in contact with a trusted real estate agent and loan officer, and was asking, do you have any other tips for a first-time home buyer that is living abroad or out of state?
Yes, absolutely. Buy 10 years ago. But since you can't do that, your next best time to buy would be now. And I don't mean that facetiously. DK, distinction from first-time buyer or buyer in general, we always want to buy from the outside in. Andrew made reference to doing some reconnaissance around the neighborhood through Google. And of course, we really want to understand that as real estate evaluates, often where you have infrastructure developments, you have amenities that are important for community support, all the things that bring people in, like hospitals and schools and parks. So really look at the macro picture, because those are the things that are going to be influencing value over time. Mm-hmm. And so, because if you put a cucumber into a jar of pickles, there's a conditioning factor of that environment. So I would look as a first-time buyer is, don't so much find yourself falling in love with a specific unit or home as much as first really falling in love with the community that it represents. And there's some other fundamentals that people always mention, and that is, if you're buying, for example, a condominium home, an apartment, buy the one that you can afford maximum in your budget, but is the lowest price in the building that you can get into. So you want to be the person that owns the more modest home in a nice neighborhood versus the nicest home in the neighborhood, if you follow me. And in terms of the first-time buyer provisions, of course, I think you're probably already acquainted with those. Your realtor had given you some orientation around that. But always stick with the fundamentals. And first-time buyers tend to buy largely on emotion. Well, who of us doesn't buy an emotion? We make an emotional decision, and then what do we do later, Andrew? We start to come up with all the rationale to support why we did that. And
so it's a true statement.
So the fact is, I didn't buy a Tesla because, theoretically it was the best overall consumer choice. I bought the Tesla because I love the look of the car, and then I bring all the reasons why I bought it. And so don't make sure to keep your emotions on a leash. I would really try to collaborate with people that are wise in the matter. If you have family, if you have wise friends, try to get some counsel on it. And if you feel as though one got away, usually it's because it was a decoy of something that was a lot better. Be patient, get good counsel, and think on paper when it comes to buying something, pros and cons. and then your choice will become very clear for you.
Thank you for that, Michael. So DK, I hope that all of that wisdom and insight is helpful to you, my friend. And of course, you can always drop us a line or another comment if you have any additional questions. But great point. And I'm glad that you brought it up, DK. Thank you. A Casa says, good morning. I am currently at work, but we'll be checking out the live tomorrow again. Love the information provided. Found this channel about 2 weeks ago. I am currently in escrow in Inland Empire, California. A Casas, when you come back on, because thank you, number one, for jumping on, even though you were at work and making a comment. Thank you for that. And when you do watch after the live tomorrow, great, awesome job getting into escrow. Super excited for you getting ready to close on your new home, and super happy to have you with us as part of our tribe. You know, my friend Sean Cannell always says your vibe attracts your tribe. So let's make sure that we put out the good vibe to attract the good tribes. Thank you so much for that, my friend. Greatly appreciate it. So Addison Net, Mr. Addison also goes by Addie. Addie, I hope that you are still here with us. Addie, Michael, for reference, is not too far from your neck of the woods in Portland, Oregon. And Addie is a loan officer with Finance of America. He does a really cool mortgage loan officer podcast. And he and one of his counterparts that also has a YouTube channel, coincidentally called Portland or Living in Oregon. I believe that's what it is, Living in Portland, Oregon, were one of our special guests earlier when I first started streaming. And it was awesome to have Addie and his counterpart with us. It was a great time, great fun. So Addie, thank you so much for checking in, my friend. We've been keeping in touch since that live stream, by the way, and super positive energy. Anybody looking in the Portland, Oregon market, Finance of America loan officer right there, Addison Net. Great guy to get in touch with. But anyways, he says, love the transparency and approach of breaking down complex terms and strategies to digestible takeaways for the general public. Love 100 US, right? So Celeste, I think that was a prop to you, my dear, with breaking down the MBS stats and information, and probably
the heart.
The heart? I don't know. I gotta try to find the camera, but I'm definitely. Oh, there it is. There it is. I had to try to do it looking at the screen. There you go. The hearts, yes, the loves. That's awesome. And also Michael's analogies he was making. So we had a lot of great Michaelism so far today. So Lynn Ann Willard says, hey, everybody. Hey, Lynn Ann. Thank you for being here, my friend. A Casa says, any thoughts on reducing home taxes? Is it possible? Read of a homestead and noted the Hernandez family's eligibility. Thanks in advance. A Casa says, there is no way to reduce property taxes unless the county decides to reduce them themselves. Unless Michael's about to school me on some real estate education I don't have, it's not a possibility to reduce homeowner taxes unless the county reduces them. Michael, am I correct? Is that the same in everything that you've observed?
Yeah, it's an important question, and it's a question that most people would look at as a cost to them in owning their home. Maybe the goal in life is to pay higher taxes.
No,
because what it represents, of course, is that you are invested into a higher quality asset, and so it's the price we pay for the opportunity. But that aside, there are occasions where people have petitioned because they're taxed. There's a whole regression model that the revenue branch uses to evaluate your property, and if you feel as though all the similar properties in the area, well, regardless of how you feel, if the data says that they all sold for 20% less in the last year than the tax assessed value, and that, as that tide has dropped perhaps in your community, it represents a variance between actual market value and what you're being assessed, you would be able to petition that. And often they will listen to your logic, reappraise, and they'll lower your tax, not the mill rate, but the valuation. That is a two-edged sword, unfortunately, because in the future, when you sell, buyers often will use your tax assessment in their view as an appraisal of your property. So it might come around to bite you in the future.
Good stuff, Michael. Thank you for sharing.
Might be a loophole. I'm pretty sure I heard that veterans with a particular disability rating can be exempt from property taxes.
It depends on the state. I've made videos about that, and that's probably one of the videos that ACOS had watched since he brought up the homestead video that I made, because I did make a video about property taxes. The only way that you could ever reduce property taxes, from what I studied and learned across all 50 United States, is number one, does the state or county have any specific programs that honors veterans, whether disabled or a period of service? In such cases, you can actually get a percentage of your property tax or all of it included to be actually taken out. So, I mean, that's a case like in Las Vegas, Nevada, they recognize us veterans. So my property taxes are paid by the county, essentially. So I just have to go back once a year and renew the credit that the county gives me for serving in the combat theater for the time that I served. And it's a once a year, every May, they send out a card, and I got to have it in by July. Otherwise, I get hit with the full property tax. But they give me the opportunity to submit this, and it doesn't pay all of my property tax in my case, but it does offset the property tax. So it'd be a reduction of it. But that's a veteran, right? The next one is for perhaps senior citizens, depending on their age, depending on their disability status. It's certain programs that assessor offices across the United States, based upon the county, may recognize those individuals and provide a lifeline of support to them in the form of reduced or no property taxes. So when you talk about reducing home taxes right out of the gate, the answer is no, unless you fit these following criteria. But is this typical in real estate in the lending world? The answer is always, well, it depends. Maybe yes, maybe no. It just really depends on your situation. So ACOSs, if you're a veteran, depending on where you are, get with the county and check out and see what programs there are. If you're a senior citizen, see if you meet the muster for that. If you have a disability, then see if there's something for that. Because those are the three categories that I found to be typical across the United States in my research for that video about property taxation. Homestead is a good thing to always look into. It's a staggering $30 here in Las Vegas, Nevada to get a homestead, and it would protect your home up to a price of $640,000 of equity. And what it is, it protects you against somebody that if you, God forbid, went out and you got into a collision and it was your fault, and that was a bad one, they could come after everything you've got, but they couldn't take your home. Now, who could take your home? Uncle Sam, because Uncle Sam always, gets his at the end of the day, right? So essentially, you're protected from private party suits up to a specific dollar amount. Different states have different homestead capabilities, and some have none. So it's one of those things that in that video, ACOSs, you notice in the comment section that have been growing over the years on that. Fortunately, a lot of people have been engaging with the call to action there to say, hey, please let us know if you have this in your state, what it looks like. So great question, by the way, and great commentary. Vern, thank you so much for being here. Vern says, hi, I'm on the home buying process, 2 weeks to closing. We locked in our rate for 3.1%. That's smoking low. For 30 years here in Las Vegas. Well, what's up? I'm here in Vegas. Come on. Yeah. But hey, nonetheless. So that seller's canceling on your deal. That's a shame. So it would there's so much of that stuff that can go both different directions. And Vern, I want to say thank you for highlighting that a seller can cancel your deal based upon reasons in that situation. Hopefully you left me another comment somewhere here, and Vern, to give me some context so I know how to assist in better comment. But thank you all the same for being here. Claudia says, Andrew, thank you for sharing your own personal journey. It's so inspirational. Thank you, Claudia. I'm glad that meant a lot to you, and I hope that it helps you and other people too. If we will but just get and gain clarity within ourselves, we can focus, we can take personal accountability, personal responsibility, and we can make changes that we can believe in, because we are the change, and the belief is where we want to be. And if we put that into action every single day, we don't have to be perfect. If we just try to get 1% better day by day, that's all that it takes. Now, I'm a huge work in progress, and probably why I got 672 videos, and there's YouTubers that have a lot less and got a lot more followers on them. But for me, it's been a path, and it's been a journey. It's been part of my experience to just try to improve and give my all and do my best. So some people, maybe they're just gifted with the ways of video and stuff. But all the same, at the end of the day, it's all about you and your personal life journey and accomplishing your life's purpose the best that you can. So take the action, and you can excel, and you can reach the heights of your dreams. Looking back 10 years ago, I couldn't have envisioned where I am today in life. And I hope that 10 years from now, I can say the same thing. So everything is possible if we take action. Chelsea,
Send.
thank you. Chelsea Zupin, thank you so much for joining us. Chelsea says, can you provide education on buying points and seller concessions towards closing cost? Our loan officer is talking about buying points with our concessions, but we need the money for closing costs. So Celeste, you have your notebook handy, yes? Jot this down, because you and I will be making a recorded video on this topic, because there's a lot going on that. So you and I will be making that recorded video. But to help Chelsea now, saying, can you provide education on buying points and seller concessions towards the closing cost? Yes, we absolutely can. And the best way I'm going to be able to do that is in recorded content to try to give you some help right here on the spot to your latter point. Celeste, I'd like you to chime in on that portion that says the loan officer is talking about buying points with the concessions, but they need the money for the buyer closing costs. What would you suggest?
Well, I mean, if you need the money for the closing costs do have to be paid some way, somehow. And if you can't get a gift or you don't have the money already saved, and when I say gift, a gift from family, your family will gift you the money, then unfortunately it wouldn't make sense to buy down the interest rate, because that can be costly depending on how far you're looking to buy it down. It can be anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 or $4,000, and that's just going to be added to the closing costs. So it's just going to increase your closing costs, and that seller concession is going to cover that. And if there's not enough money to cover it, then there's really not an option to buy it down.
This is a great point. So ultimately, who calls the shot in that situation? The loan officer or the buyer, Celeste?
The loan officer
calls the shot of what to do with the closing cost money from the seller?
Well, I mean, if there's no other way to pay the closing costs, there's no other funds or any money. I mean.
So at the end of the day, Chelsea, what I think the better part of practice here is to simply give your loan officer a call, ask them why they're trying to buy down the rate and why they're using the seller concessions that have been provided to you to pay for your buyer closing costs. Because at the end of the day, realistically, unless it's something the lender's looking at to try to keep you and actually close on your loan, to Celeste's point a moment ago, then in reality, it's your decision where that money gets applied. So if the loan officers are looking at a situation that seller concession money or those funds are needed to purchase down the rate, buy down the rate in this case, to help you close on your loan, then obviously that would be tantamount to covering the buyer closing costs that would otherwise be associated. So it's important, number one, gain clarity. Everything in life really begins with understanding the reasons why something's being done and being clear on it. Best way to gain clarity and remove that fear, that false evidence appearing real, is to ask the question. So Chelsea, what I'd like you to do, if you're still on right now, probably the best thing that you could do is actually jump off the stream, maybe come back to it later, call your loan officer, figure out what's going on, and get the answers to your questions. So then you do know what's happening moving forward. So that's the thought, Chelsea. Please make that call to your loan officer.
Yeah, it just doesn't really make sense because, I mean, interest rates haven't really moved that much in the past 3 weeks. So if they're in transaction and they're just finding out right now that they need to buy down the rate, that's kind of a problem, especially if the loan officer knew that they didn't have the funds for that.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I would definitely get with your loan officer, find out what's going on and figure out, is this something that needs to be done to close, or is this something that would just be nice, you know, to have a lower interest rate and a lower mortgage payment.
Good stuff. So either way, circle back, call the loan officer. So Natalie, thank you so much for chiming in. Natalie says, what would look more appealing? Making the first offer on a new property or waiting for offers to come in and then making the offer based on the number of offers? Posting. There you go. Okay. What would look more appealing? Making the first offer on a new listing, or waiting for offers to come in and then make an offer based on the number of offers? So Natalie, number one of the things that you need to do is gain insight and clarity with your trusted real estate advisor in the offer process and negotiation strategies in your area. One of those things look like always having a game plan, already having signed and been reviewed with your buyer disclosures before you get out and looking at property. Number two, and more to the heart of your question, is to always size up a negotiation strategy. Being a former Marine, I like to get as much intel and recon done as possible. And there's two ways that I like to do that to help gain insight into the negotiation tactics and also whether it's even worth it at the end of the day. And one of the ways is starting with what's called a comparative market analysis as a real estate practitioner, making sure that the value of that property at its list price is the correct price, if it's high, low, or in the middle, right? That's rule number one. Number two is picking up the phone, your trusted real estate advisor that is, and calling that listing agent and saying, hey, would you be so kind to let me know if you have any offers on this property? If the answer to that is yes, then your offer negotiation strategy just got turned. Because if you were going to be looking at a property, let's just assume it was fair market value and everything was good to go with it. But let's say that you wanted to ask for some buyer closing costs. And let's say the property had only been on market for 10 days and average days on the market in your area are 90 days, right? Highly unlikely negotiation right out of the gate to get any buyer closing costs covered for in that situation. But let's say you wanted to go for it. Well, buyer closing costs might have been a consideration that the seller might have thought about if they didn't have any other offers. The moment they got all offers, and speaking now from whenever I list property, and Michael would likely attest to the same, seller starts going down what's called an estimated net sheet. In other words, how much are they going to walk away from the sale with that property, right? So if you start breaking down the numbers and somebody is asking for $10,000 of buyer closing costs, let's say on a $350,000 house, then another buyer is asking for, let's say, $5,000, and another buyer is asking for none. Who do you think would likely win that deal? And the litmus test in the negotiation is always this. Number one, as a buyer, would you accept your own offer? If you wouldn't accept your own offer, what makes you think a seller will? And on the selling side, the litmus test is, would you buy your own house for the price that you have it listed? Or would you work with you during the closing process in this negotiation if you were the buyer? So the reason this is important is it puts negotiation strategy in perspective. It helps us all hashtag JTAB, which is just take a breath to reassess calmly, coolly, collectively, so that we can make a well-informed decision and practical negotiation step. Now, Natalie, as much as I could really dive really deep in this, and I really have in a lot of recorded video content that I've made over the last 4.5 years, it's hard to be able to give you more specifics without having more specifics, if you understand what I'm saying. So if you want to hit me up, send me an email or something, let me know. But it's something that at the end of the day, one of the best things to do is that you can have that conversation with your trusted real estate advisor about negotiation tactics and strategies in your area. So thank you for all the same for being here. Nancy says, good morning. Can you please talk about gift equity? My father-in-law is selling us a house that's worth $300,000 for $190,000 and mentioned a gift equity to help with the down payment. Celeste?
So I haven't really experienced using gift equity before. I would say this is not as common of a situation. So I think what you're saying is that the father is going to gift them. I mean, basically, he's selling the house for way less than what it's worth. But I'm confused on, is the father still like giving funds towards down payment, or are you coming out of pocket with your own funds for the down payment? I'm confused on that. Do you have experience with that, Andrew?
No, not in that situation. No, I've always, obviously most people that would do that would actually be doing a private party transfer aside from real estate agents, and they'd be transferring the property internally and have an agreement between family members that say, hey, they're working with a loan officer, Celeste Harvey, let's say, and they only need $190,000 because the family member or whoever's doing the transfer of the property is letting it go for under market knowingly. And normally whenever I've seen people want to do that, or I've had questions about that, is simply because a family member is trying to set up another family member for success. To Michael's point earlier in the stream about real estate being an amazing vehicle to financial success and independence in the future if done correctly. So I have seen these things happen. But as far as the gift equity is concerned, I'm not exactly sure what that means in this case.
Yeah.
Further clarification. So it's a great.
I'm going to look into that. That's interesting because I've never run across that on the lending side. Have you seen anything like that, Michael?
It's uncommon, but I think the question that I understand is that there is a maneuver in order to, at face value, be purchasing the home for what would be less than typical market value, correct? By way of a subsidy from the family member. Is that right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. And I think that the only criteria around that, which, you know, it sounds legitimate, and yes, we have seen it done, as long as disclosure is made by the bank, because there's an old saying that creative financing is often followed by creative litigation.
Yeah.
So, you know, appraisals come into play, and if somebody's defrauding the bank, in other words, they're borrowing 110% of the value, well, you know, those maneuvers designed to keep the bank's eclipse from that fact are usually what result in problems. But you've got a lot of latitude when you're dealing with a family member. And, you know, clearly there's other methodologies that can be used, like we know about second mortgages that can even be suspended. There can be balloon payments. There can be agreements for sale. And so I would subscribe to the advice of your realtor. Lawyers are really smart too sometimes. Well, okay, let's say lawyers are generally high IQ. And what I mean is, with regards to that, sometimes it's a good idea to consult a lawyer as to how to set something up. They're very good at that. In fact, they're even considered to have better capacity than realtors sometimes in that regard.
Good stuff. And thank you for sharing your experience with us. It was very insightful. Natalie says, in regards to my question, the house was posted on a Thursday, the listing, but they will not be looking at offers until Monday afternoon. Completely typical strategy, one that is actually taught through a Vehicle and National Association of Realtors designation program called Seller's Representative Specialist. Now, I have way too much alphabet soup after my name, so I typically don't leave any alphabet soup except for my name anymore. But that said, one of the stratagems for creating a multiple bid property is to price it correctly out of the gate. And then when you know you're in a strong seller's market, which we very much are at this time, is to also announce that the seller will not be reviewing offers for X number of days. This is intended to cause, to Michael's point earlier with a hungry golden retriever, this is intended to cause demand and a buying frenzy. And if somebody else wants it, then more people typically want it. It's like Celeste and I've had conversations about when she was at SDSU getting her degree, right? Remember some of these conversations? All the boys would be hitting on Celeste, right? But she wasn't interested in the ones that wanted her attention. She was interested in the one that approached her authentically and probably didn't give her as much attention as she wanted. And she's been with him now for what, 6 years, 7 years? So
5.5.
5.5 years. So the point there is the same is true with a home. When we put a home on market as a listing agent, we're really playing Match.com with that home by presenting its features, amenities, and benefits, or essentially what I term to an acronym, what makes your home fab. In this case, those features, amenities, and benefits tied down to the rarity, making it scarce, making a demand there because it was priced right. It looks right. Oh my God, rates are great. This isn't going to last. I gotta have this. Goes back to the golden retriever that is so hungry and wants more than their share. And in the case of that is the golden retriever in this case is now the seller that wants more than maybe the market value of the home. But what happens then is they put it forth, right? And then they say, hey, just so you know, we're not going to be, they're just completely nonchalant, seduction psychology, if you will. We're just not going to review any offers. It's not a big deal to us. We're not going to do this for a few days. And what that does is it leaves buyers chomping at the bit, worried that something's going to go down over the weekend. They start increasing their own offer without ever being asked to. So in reality, it's a tactic and it's a stratagem, and it goes back to taking a step back, understanding the psychological principles to what Michael was sharing earlier in the stream about human behavior in specific, and not falling prey to it. It's not the last house, Natalie, and it won't be the last house that comes on the market. It could be a nice home. But don't fall in love with the home until you're in contract, and still don't fall in love until you've gotten through the appraisal and the underwriting process, and everything is pretty much ironclad at that point. Because Vern did tie in a moment ago with clarity, and Vern, thank you for doing that, because Natalie, this is also going to assist you as we move on to Vern's comment. Vern said, hey, the appraisal came back higher than the purchase price and the seller wants out. How would you handle that situation? I'm with a real estate lawyer now filing a case for specific performance in Vegas. How long does that take? So Vern, right out of the gate, how does the seller know the appraisal came in high? Because
the seller shouldn't know.
That's between a loan officer and the buyer specifically. Sometimes the buyer's agent might know, but most times agents don't really know what the appraisal is other than if it comes in low. That's when we get put on the hook to try to figure some things out on the real estate side of things in negotiations. But generally, a loan officer will send a buyer a copy of the appraisal because they have to. But it's between the buyer and a loan officer. Celeste would just be saying, hey, Andrew, great news. Michael's home came in up value as is. Well, how much did it go for? Up value as is, right? So not even the buyer agent will oftentimes know unless the buyer turns around and tells them. And this goes to case in point with the Hernandez family's most recent video where their appraisal came in higher than their contract price. And I made a side take inside that video that it's very easy in the excitement of finding out your appraisal came in higher to want to share it with everybody and how bad an idea that is until after you close on the house. Because if you broadcast that information, of course, the seller might see it, but well, what do you mean? Well, I want fair market value for my home. What do you mean you're going to have $10,000 built in equity from day one? I want that $10,000. Of course they do. But they also signed a contract, and that contract is legally binding. And it is good to hear that you're with a real estate attorney exploring your options. So under that situation, lean on the understanding and insight of your real estate attorney and see what they have to say. As far as how long does a suit for specific performance take in Las Vegas, I am not a real estate attorney. So please contact and have that conversation with your real estate attorney for the odds of that happening in the situation and presenting those facts to them. I do want to say a heartfelt thank you for sharing that situation with us, because that is an extremely interesting situation. And it is also one that really begs the question, number one, how did the appraisal even get out of the bag? So thank you for sharing with us, Fern. Terry says, I live in Montana and I got my property taxes reduced by 80%. I am a senior citizen, but the Department of Revenue devalued my home by 30%. Bingo, bingo. There's two ka-chings based on the conversation we were having earlier about property taxes. Number one, being a senior citizen. Number two, Department of Revenue, county, if you will, devalued the home by 30%, which I said county is the one that would set the valuation marker. Terry, thank you so much for letting us know how that played out in Montana for you, my friend. Chelsea says, thank you for the information. Very welcome, Chelsea. Thank you for being here. TM says, a home that I'm watching just went down by $10,000. Can I put an offer in for $10,000 even lower, or is that pushing it? House has been on the market for 19 days. Thoughts, Michael?
You miss 100% of the putts that you don't make. You just got to take a putt, of course. Or somebody else said you can't aim a duck to death. So just go back to theory. Sometimes when a home, for example, has been on the market for 2 weeks, the honeymoon stage is generally over. Obviously, there were no multiple offers, correct? And so sellers are going to have a lower confidence level. The fact, as you reported, that they'd already reduced the price by $10,000, I don't know what the asking price is, so it could be irrelevant, indicates that the seller has maybe been appraised that they've missed the mark. Maybe their agent said, look, we were ambitious. We are obviously, the price is being rejected by the market, so let's reposition the price. And generally that looks like 3% to 5%. That's what we see when people reposition prices. And so, but that doesn't mean that they're going to immediately trigger multiple offers. When you do, for example, if they reduce the price by $50,000, they would, within the next 24 hours, what would happen? They'd have all kinds of offers, wouldn't they? So don't be bashful. Bully offers are not against the law. And what is a bully offer? It's an offer that maybe is coming in 20% lower than asking price. Maybe it has a acceptance time to deal with the offer of only 4 hours. Maybe a bully offer is, I want to take possession in 2 weeks. But remember, besides the price, there's other components that make an offer acceptable. There are homes where, in a competing situation, to somebody's earlier question, the buyer actually, the lowest bidder got the property, not the highest, because the other components were more attractive to the seller. Remember, you have the price, then you have the deposit. A big deposit is generally a better component in an offer than a small one, if you'd agree. And it speaks to the buyer's capacity. The other is the dates. The sellers may really want a quick closing. Others may want to wait 3 months so they can find something. Leave dates open if it's within your discretion to do that. Dates are very important to sellers. And if you can get them to choose a date to facilitate what they're up to, then they might work with you a little bit more on price, if that makes sense. And then, of course, the terms. Contracts that are laden with all kinds of clauses where there's umpteen reasons for the buyer to walk away are not considered to be as strong as an offer that's simply contingent to the buyer getting their bank to appraise the property, for example, or a simple inspection. That's why cash buyers, if you will, people who have strong capacity to buy, they tend to have the upper hand over buyers that don't have that capacity, as demonstrated by the terms and the dates. So work with your realtor on that. But remember this, the highest bidder always gets to keep the home. And sometimes that is the seller.
This is true. This is true. It's very good points, and definitely appreciate your insights there.
I'll need to excuse myself in about 2 minutes, if I may.
Yeah, we're winding down. We've been streaming for just over an hour, and I've been working on keeping the stream down to an hour, but it gets so engaging and so much fun with everybody that's joining in. So for everybody, if we didn't have a chance to get to your question today, what I'd ask you to do is to go ahead and drop us a line in the comments. And then what'll happen is Celeste and I ping it. And if, Michael has an opportunity, perhaps he can hop on and jump on a comment or two. And we're going to keep sharing the love. And, we're going to be back twice a week for now, doing live streams at 9 a.m. Pacific, Mondays and Fridays. So have another opportunity to join in and pop on the stream. In the meantime, Michael, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us today. It's been a true, wonderful privilege and honor having you with us today.
It's a pleasure sharing the planet with you and Celeste and all these great people that took the time to invest in edifying themselves. And I want to acknowledge you for that. Thank you.
And Celeste, as always, thank you so much. It's so great having everybody up today. And, again, let's go out there and make it a great weekend, make it a great day. And please remember to be the reason someone smiles today. We'll see you soon.